Today we have Dave Tucker, Senior Advisor, Next Level Ventures. He is a Senior Advisor for Next Level Ventures and works as a consultant for technology companies. He's been in the technology industry for 30 plus years with working with large enterprises, including Hewlett-Packard and Siemens, and at startups, including Workiva, Engineering Animation, and Trade Inc. So he recently stepped down as Senior Vice President of Technology at Workiva, where he helped to build the R&D organization from a handful of people to 450 plus individuals over an 11-year period, and helped grow the company from 0 to 300 million in revenue. He's also active in the Ames community as a member of the Ames Economic Development Commission and Ames Seed Capital. He also does quite a bit of mentoring. So if he is resonating with you today, students, staff, and faculty, please feel free to contact us and we'll connect with Dave. He's very insightful, very great at startup and looking at gaps as well as opportunities. We're really happy to have him. Today, joining me is Nakaya Rucker, who's going to be supervising the chat, and Anna Luge from the College of Design, who is directing innovation and entrepreneurship for the College of Design, and Jim Oliver, who is, when his internet comes back and working, will be our moderator today. But I will start, Dave, with saying hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Karen. Jim, it's good to be here, everyone.
Yes. Jim, or Dave, I want to start out a little bit talking about what we're very interested. First of all, where are you now? If you can talk, just introduce yourself a little bit generally. And then I want to focus on some questions about your innovator journey, what that looked like. So
Okay.
where are you now?
Well, it's interesting. You introduced me as a senior advisor, and actually, the start of December, I signed on as a partner with the Next Level Ventures.
Great.
And I had been experimenting with this career path on and off for a little while as I decided to step down with Workiva. And everything just came together in a very nice way. And so now I'm kind of off and running and finding I'm back to that mode where there's a lot I don't know. In fact, I don't know what I don't know. And it almost feels like I'm a new developer on a team. I just don't really know a lot of things that are going on, but it's incredibly interesting and fascinating choice. So that's kind of where I am right now today.
I just want to stop there a minute because I can't tell you how often our students are bringing that topic up about starting and being in a start position and putting yourself out there when you're trying to invent and innovate and you don't know, right? So what does it feel like to be in a position, especially having been a senior level executive and going through places where you do know, and now where you are, whereas you said you don't know? What? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand sometimes that that's the best position you can be in. I decided to step down from Workiva partly because I felt like I'd kind of done the things that I could do there. There were some still areas I could move into, but I know from experience, if you look at my career track, generally if I've stayed in a position around 2 years, with companies anywhere from 5 to 10 years. But when you get into that position where everything is new, like if it feels uncomfortable, that's when it can be really interesting. And it's intimidating. I get it. Like it's hard, especially for me, where I came out someplace where I knew everybody, I knew everything, and all of a sudden, at times I feel like kind of an idiot again. And I keep reminding myself, like that's you specifically set out to be here, and there's a reason for it.
Okay, we got to explore that because we just also interviewed James Water recently, and he said, based in Holdington, he was at Caterpillar, also a long-termer, and he said, the biggest thing I can tell students is don't be afraid to be an idiot. So now that is foreign to every single human being seeking security, where it seems like as you innovate, you want to get to that security point, but you're actually saying the opposite. You want to be, this is where it's interesting. So how do you do that? How do you tolerate that? And why do you want to be there?
Well, honestly, because I've been through this cycle a few times in my career, I knew a little bit what to expect. I knew it was going to be uncomfortable. I also, the thing I keep having to remind myself now is that I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And I think that's, to me, one of the most critical parts of innovation is being okay making mistakes, and even creating an environment where it's okay for people to make mistakes, because that's when you learn. And so when you don't know, and when you're screwing up, like, that's when you're figuring things out, and that's when you tend to take a look at things in a different light than maybe you had before.
So it's interesting because I think one of the things students struggle with is how they're perceived if they don't know, and being in that spot of discomfort. So what you're saying is this is an expectation and a culture of innovation, is the not knowing and the being in that space.
Yes, and the most important thing I think is for students stepping into that, into their first job, starting in a career track, try to remind yourself every time you do make a mistake, or every time you're going into something, don't be afraid to try it. I think a lot of times people feel like they're being judged on their success, like what they deliver. Okay, I
Right.
met a schedule, I delivered this on time, so I can feel good about that. And it's true, that's a way that you build confidence. But one of the things, particularly in companies that really value innovation, and not every company does value the same way, but companies that value innovation, what they're looking at is, how did this person handle it? Like, did they think of something new? Did they try it? Did they express their opinion on something? And 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 did they have the guts to really kind of go ahead and give it a shot?
Can we
Companies
talk
that
about
get it, they
that?
will work that way. Yeah.
Because you spoke about several things like failure, mistakes, trying, the culture of giving a shot about it. But you have the added bonus of having life experience and our students here. So you are comfortable in being uncomfortable. But could you trace us back when you all started, and how did you deal with that? Because there was no cushion. It was really like, there's a difference between making mistakes and trying and giving your best shot and really failing at a company. So how do we distinguish that for our students so that they are comfortable with the innovation space?
I
I know.
I wish I could say, do this and you will feel comfortable, and you will
Yeah.
get used to it. The bottom line is, I've been doing it close to 35 years now, and it still hurts. Like, I do something and mess up. Like, I was on a call the other day and I said something, and it was clear, like, the people on the call knew I didn't know what I was talking about. And about 5 minutes in, it's like, oh man, I wish I'd have kept my mouth shut. And I felt terrible about that. Like, sitting home at night, I was like, man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. And I have to keep reminding myself, it's like, okay, you're telling people to do that. Like, you're telling people this is okay. You're telling people this is how you innovate. And yet you still feel lousy when you
Yeah.
do that. And that's all I can say is just, okay, get up the next day, go back,
Yeah.
try it again, and just don't stop doing that. I think if you say, okay, I've messed up and I just need to go find something else to do, I need to find a new career path, that's not the approach that's going to get you ahead.
I wanna tie into that too, Dave, because one of the things that you talked about is what feels good is delivery, deadlines, security, those sorts of things. Now, often our classrooms are all about that, right? So that's how you base your performance at school. Delivery, schedules, deadlines, exams. It's all mapped out. You know the criteria. Now let's go in a time capsule. Take yourself back to getting out of school where you made that transition between the university and the expected and how that was. Or maybe you had an experience before. And then when you put yourself in a position to innovate. So you left security and you put yourself there. What did that look like? Let's trace that journey. And then how did you learn to put yourself there over and over and over again?
Well, it's interesting. If I look, my first job out of college was with Hewlett Packard. And so I graduated from Iowa State, computer science. I really dreamed about a career in Silicon Valley because I thought, man, that's where everything's happening. That's where innovation
Yeah.
is happening. And so I got that opportunity. And that's when I first stepped into a job where I thought, okay, I got good grades in computer science. I know how to program. Like, let me at it. I'm going to go do this. And then I stepped in and realized, this is a really complex environment that I stepped into. This is not what I thought it was going to be. This is actually kind of hard. But what I started doing was just focusing on what are the small things I can do. So if somebody asked me to do something, on a project, I did try and complete it. And I don't want to say that it's not important to complete things successfully. Like that's when you start out, like you do build a reputation by getting your work done, delivering on time. That's an important thing to build credibility and trust in you that you can deliver if somebody asks you to do things and deliver. The difference, I think, when you're talking about innovation is, do I deliver just what they asked for?
Yes.
Or do I deliver something that just kind of blows them away because they're like, oh, how did you think of that? That is really cool. And that's where you get into, you first start out and you start delivering, and then you start doing things that really people notice. And that's when you're you're moving towards a more innovative career path, I think.
And David, when you say, sorry, I'm writing everything that you say. When you say delivering what they ask for or delivering something else, is it something else totally different, or is it something else adding more to what they have? And how a new incomer innovator has this confidence to say, it's totally different.
Yeah.
You're seeing it all wrong.
It might be a little of both. Sometimes there are things you need to deliver just what they want. And, one of the things I've tried to do as I advanced higher and, came at it more as a manager, someone who's trying to lead an organization, I would try to emphasize the point is, I'm not so interested in just the output that you deliver. Like, do you deliver this project on time? And we've delivered what we said we would deliver. That's a part of it. But what really makes a difference in my mind is when you deliver the outcome that people are looking for. So I may do something and I may deliver, I would say, a program that does something, and it may work and be fine and does everything they need to. When I know I'm really on the right track is when I have the outcome. I have a customer on the other side, or I have some user who says, man, I love this. This makes my life easier. Like, I really want to work with you. That's really the outcome that you want to generate is creating people on the other side of what you're doing that are really happy with it.
Happy. Yeah.
So it's not I'll just do what you said, but it's creating people at the end of the day that really like what you're doing.
That's worth pausing on, output versus outcome, because one is transactional and execution oriented, and the other is stewardship oriented. Stewardship of the relationship, stewardship of the product, stewardship of the growth and the innovation. and the potential and possibility. And I think that's really, really important. So I'm really glad that, Dave, you made that distinction, and it's an important distinction even for our students as they're innovating, to understand that you talked about going that extra yard, right? And an extra mile. Output is the expected, outcome is the possible and the impressor, right?
Yeah, I like the way you say that, because the word that I come back to that underlies all this is trust. If you're starting out in a career, trying to move up the ladder, take on the next thing, the more the people that you work for trust you to do the right thing, the more they're going to give you those opportunities.
Yeah.
If whether it's trusting you to deliver what you need to deliver, to do something really interesting, the more you do what you said you were going to do, the more they trust you, the more you have the opportunities to do the really fun stuff, right? And to take the risks.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit on both sides.
And
Hi.
Jamila,
Hi, everyone.
or Nakaya, you have some questions?
Hi, I have a question. I'm sorry, I had some internet issues in the beginning, which seems to be the norm these days. So great to see you again, Dave. One question that I have from the perspective of a professional is, and sorry if you may have answered this while I was gone, but I'm thinking of when students are coming out of college and they're applying to these different jobs, maybe they have multiple offers. What are some good indicators of innovative companies? How do they know, like when a student is applying, what are some specific things that they should be looking for? What are questions that they should be asking in their interviews to determine if this company is a good fit for them in the innovation area? Are they going to be able to present new ideas? What are your thoughts on that?
That's really an interesting question. I've kind of wondered that myself over the years. How do I, just like I wonder when I'm hiring somebody, is this someone who's really going to be able to innovate and do great work? I've noticed that in companies that are innovative, they tend to ask a lot of questions. They tend to be curious. They tend to, when you're interviewing with them, they may ask you things like, that's interesting. How did you come to that conclusion? How did you figure that out? Explain to me a little bit why you're thinking that way. If you're getting those kind of questions, I think you've got a pretty good indicator that, yeah, these guys are pretty serious about innovation. If they ask you things like, just what grade did you get? How did you do in this class? Have you delivered? It's in your internship. Did you deliver what you said you were going to? They're just evaluating you on, your credentials of what you've accomplished, not on what's possible for you.
I'll come back to that output. You're looking for output versus outcome questions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you're looking for a company that's asking outcome-based questions and process-based, and how did you get there, and curiosity-based. So that's also really great advice for our students to be able to put it in that bucket. If you're asking deliverable questions, transactional questions, things that are totally about output, how many, how much, how often.
Yeah.
That would be not a path that would be as engaging or creative, maybe.
Yeah, I like the way you put that together. I hadn't necessarily even thought about that way, but
can we have a segue? Can we have a segue on the other side as well, which
Sure.
would be, you started as part of the team, Hewlett Packard, and then you did several jumps, but the point that you knew that you wanted to be a manager or to be on the leadership side. Can you talk us a little bit about that? And my second question would be, then when you became a manager, how do you spot talent? What can our students do so that they would face a Dave Tucker at the time and say, I want to hire this student?
yeah, I don't know that I set out wanting to be a manager. And for a lot of my career, I kind of avoided. What I really loved was technology. I mean, I loved writing code. I loved building systems. I loved what I realized is that at some point you start to look at beyond just what you can do. It's more like, okay, what can we do with this set of people around me? And so for me, it came to this point where I said, you know, this is, I think I could get more done if I tried to engage more people around me. And that's what led to me becoming a manager. It wasn't because I said I wanted to be a manager. In fact, that's one of the key things I would look at when I would look for talent within the organization. Who is management material? I would look for who's able to engage with those, like who's able to get people to buy into them, who's able to go around and kind of help people understand like why it's important we do this thing. Why is this important? You know, and create that environment where, you know, if a colleague of theirs screwed up or did something wrong, they weren't sitting there saying, well, we would have got this done, but you didn't deliver. It's more like, okay, how do we look at this holistically? Like, how can we do this next time so that this doesn't happen? I think a lot of people may not realize that becoming a manager is not like getting permission to do your job. It's being recognized that, hey, you've been doing this job already. It's about time you're a manager. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand going into it. If you want to go, if you go into your career saying, I want to be a manager, you know, everybody wants to advance up their career track. Everybody wants to, you know, move up the ladder, but you've got to kind of want to do it for the right reasons.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I ducked out, and it was some work going on at the house, and they threw a breaker, and it happened to be the same circuit that the router and modem were on. So it took me a while to get everything back up and running. But it's great to see you.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, Dave and I go way back. Worked on the same team, and I've watched his career progress completely. You know, we've got some faculty on the call as well, and everybody wants to innovate. Your discussion about the kind of under promise, over deliver message is one I always give to students. But you can take that to the extreme and say, and basically, and you've been a manager, you know, you can be a sandbagger, right? And say, you know, I think this is going to take 6 months, and it really should be 2 months. But so there's a fine balance between recognizing what has to be done and getting it done in a timely manner. And a lot of times that leads to pressure in an organization, as you remember, and that whole work-life balance thing. What do you have how did you manage to have a family and a life and have this high-tech career and be so successful in it?
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife and I might answer that differently. Because she has spent many nights with me dealing with the stress of making everything work, trying to spend some time with the kids, knowing that I had stuff that had to get done. And it is a tricky balance. I guess I want to make it clear to all the students out there, like being innovative is not an easy career path. And you are going to spend nights sitting there thinking about things. And my wife is good at calling this out. You know, so we talking about something, said, oh, you haven't been listening to me at all, have you? Because I'm sitting there thinking about something else because, you know, and also I've spent many nights thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know a solution to this problem. I don't know how to solve it. I don't think I'm capable of solving it. And at times I wasn't, right? At times I would hit a brick wall. But I think for anybody, just like you were saying, Jim, there's a balance that you've got to have as well. Like you don't get to innovate all the time. Sometimes you set things aside, but honestly, the times you set things aside, can lead to some great thinking down the road. I wish there was a clear formula pattern that I could give you for this, but innovation doesn't really have that.
Dave, I want to ground some of this discussion too, because we're talking a lot of, theoretical and about the practices and the ideas and how you do it. But I really also want to give a great homage to the career path that you took, because to your point, you really invested a lot of personal self, especially in the development of Workiva and that engineering animation pathway to Workiva to, I mean, let's hear a few more stories about what that looked like. And also some of you described some terrific and somewhat harrowing decision points in that pathway that I think are really helpful for our students to hear, because sometimes the pathway looks pretty bleak and dismal, and amazingly enough, it suddenly explodes. So let's ground this journey. Tell us the story of that.
So I think a couple of short examples that all kind of build on each other. When I was working for Jim Oliver here at Engineering Animation, there was this new concept. So we did all 3D visualization, and there was a concept of maybe we could leverage the internet and people could share this information using the internet. Now, this was back in the 90s. So use the internet to share and work as a team together. And it eventually worked. But Jim, I remember one night, when we were trying to go live with eBiz, everything fell apart. Like we were convinced like the company was going to fail because there was a lot riding on that. The next morning, we went through the night, that entire night. The next morning, somehow it came together. It's one of the best feelings I can remember. And Jim was sitting there, like I could see the sweat dripping down his face, but because nobody knew if it was going to work.
Yeah.
Another one, and it was the same. The thing is that the people who were at Engineering Animation were the same ones who started Web Filings, which became Workiva. The reason I was drawn to it is because people like that. We all have this kind of mindset. And again, another one is you talk about creating an environment for innovation. So Marty Vanderplow, now the CEO of Workiva, I remember we were going to execute the first filing, or we had our chance. We'd been building. There was a chance to do our first filing with Meredith in Des Moines. We knew the software wasn't ready. We knew the odds are it might not work, but we thought we've got to go try it. Like we just have to understand what works, what doesn't. So we're gonna give it a shot. And it was an afternoon, and the software wasn't all ready. So I was gonna by myself kind of manually we were creating an SEC filing, which is the document that a large company has to file if they're public with the SEC. And I was sitting in the office, and Marty said, well, go down to Meredith, let's give it a shot. This would be great if we can make this work. Understand if it doesn't, but let's just give it our best shot. Let's try it. If things go wrong, we'll figure it out. So we went to Des Moines, 3 of us. We sat there with them all afternoon. They were doing a parallel process. So they were doing their old process, and then they were using our software. And I was sitting literally on my knees with sweat dripping down my back at 4:25 in the afternoon. The SEC closes in Central at 4:30, and like literally pushed the button at about 4:27, and we're sitting there. Oh my gosh, did this go through? Is this going to work? And it showed up, and it worked. And so again, there's this great rush of excitement, satisfaction. It's that same thing. It's like the best feeling you ever have in your career when you do something like that. Now, the reason I pointed out Marty's comment, before I left to go to Des Moines, what I did not know, that Marty he never told me this, for 10 years, it was only I'd stepped down, sort of my going away event, Marty sort of fessed up on this issue. That afternoon, when I was leaving to Des Moines, that morning, he had mortgaged his property to be able to make payroll.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he didn't say, hey, you got to get this done. Everything, is relying on this. He was like, okay, give it a shot, but I understand. So he was trying to keep the pressure off because he understood, like, people do, if you hire good people, like, they do good work, they'll figure it out. But if you're on the other side of that, that's not easy. I can only imagine how he was feeling that day. And so you've also got to be aware, when you're working for a company that's very innovative, there are people who are holding that thing up and giving you that opportunity to do so. And so it's a little bit of a privilege to be in an environment like that. Actually, it's a big privilege to work with people like that and be in that kind of environment.
Dave, I want to speak to that too, because I think you make a very good distinction. Management and employment, that's kind of transactional. That's what you do. That's how you do it. But leadership and stewardship and ownership, which is the things that you're talking about, are particularly critical in an environment where there's innovation. Because management and employment, looking at the transaction and execution, is not enough. The leadership, the components of leadership, stewardship, and ownership, like creating security and like the risk that Marty took. That speaks volumes. Can you talk a little bit about leadership and ownership and stewardship, like those types of qualities required in an innovation environment? Because I think our students need to really understand how that environment's different than typical management and employment.
Yeah, I think there's a feeling a lot of people have that if you are a manager and a leader, you are charting the course. You are saying, here's what's going to happen. Here's how we're going to get there. You're out in front with that flag. And to an extent, that's true, but it's not the way you would think. Marty and others in the leadership team would do it by working on, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to be? You're back to this outcome thing. We want people to be able to execute their SEC filings. So do this process that had been very complex to do, but do it much easier. And the way they would really lead in that case is help define that path, but then give us the freedom to figure it out. Marty was never at my desk saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, it's like, here's what we need to accomplish, figure it out. And also that part I said, like, if you screw up, it just means we're going to go back and try it again. I mean, it's not that you, like, you're a failure. It just means we made a mistake and we need to try that again, or maybe try it a different way. And, another part of, that's the harder on the manager side of it. There are many times in my career, I thought, I know the answer. These guys, I hope they figured out this way because I know the answer. Sometimes they would figure it out that way. Sometimes it wouldn't. There's an element of humility that I think you have to have. If you're a true leader, you have to be able to say, first, you have to be able to hire people that are smarter than you. And you have to be able to listen to ideas that you don't think will work and help people decide if it will work or not. And so I think that's one of the things I've learned throughout my career is leadership is not, just about saying what we're going to do. It's about helping people kind of realize their potential and being able to do that.
Okay. Could I ask some, Nakai, do you have any questions from students? I don't want to barge in, but I do have
No question from
Okay.
student. I do have a question, but I'll go after you, Anna.
Okay, so the Des Moines story, I really like about that. And it had two things in it, the leadership and the management. But then there's another thing that Jim was hinting as well, which is pressure and the rush of the last minute and the sweating dripping down the back, which I think is accelerating in creativity worlds and design and whatnot. But being an innovator is always being on the edge. Do you have any pearls of wisdom for our students on that, like being not at ease with maybe things won't be on time, but they will be on last minute? How do you deal with pressure in the world of innovation?
I think when it comes to situations like that, I think you mentally have to prepare yourself for it.
Yeah.
You have to say, okay, I'm signing up for this. I know this is going to be hard. And it's also important to realize, like, not everybody has to be an innovator. Not everybody needs to be on that track.
Right.
If you're more comfortable just having a set of things to do, then choose that and do that. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you've got to have a spectrum of people. And I wish I had a good way of helping people understand how to deal with pressure, because my wife will tell you as well, I don't do a good job at it.
Yeah. But I like the fact that you started the conversation saying, I know what I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know. And we're full circle now, because that's it. It's like being comfortable with the unknown, right?
Yeah. I think it's more being comfortable with the fact that your stomach is going to hurt at times.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm sure it's like any student, going into a big final, and know that there's a lot of pressure. Like, you just don't feel good.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Nakaya, you had a question.
Oh, huh?
You had a question?
Oh, yeah. Yep. So Dave, you talked a bit about failure, and one of the examples that you gave or that you talked about was, you're saying, if you fail, we're going to do this again. And if you fail again, we're just going to keep tackling the same issue. So for our students who are graduating and going into the workforce, how can they build up that confidence to fail? Because I think a lot of times when you're younger and you enter into the workforce, you think, I have to be perfect all the time. I can't fail. How do you debunk that, or how do you balance failing responsibly and still exceeding and excelling?
Well, I think what you've got to do is go into a situation and actually just try to do your best. If you fail because you weren't, really committed to it, or you were failed because you were afraid to try something, or if you didn't want to put the work into it, that's different than just saying, okay, I'm going to go full steam with this. I know this is what I think, or this is what I think I need to do. So I'm going to go do that, and make a commitment to doing that. That's what will never be seen as failure. I think what will be seen as failure sometimes is if you think, well, I don't know if I can do that. I'm just going to do this because it's easier. Because you're the people you're working for are generally going to get that. Like, they're going to understand if you're really giving it your best or not. And that's not to say I've been perfect at that either. I mean, there have been some things I got into and I said, man, I don't even know, that was not a fit for me. I don't even know why I was there, because I wasn't that interested in it in the first place.
Dave, I'm curious. I just want to talk a little bit more and go a little bit more in detail about, because I'm thinking of how our students come to this. And what would be, I think about, what should they stop doing, start doing, and continue doing, right? So you're looking and you're picking those student innovators, and you're identifying really those qualities that would really, and by innovator, I'm not talking about just invention. I'm talking about students who contribute meaningfully within people who contribute meaningfully within a company. What are those indicators? And what are you advising students to do to create those indicators of, I'm going to pick that person?
Well, I think at the core, as I was listening to you, I think it's just, are you curious? You know, are you interested, curious in whatever you're doing? You know, are you asking a lot of questions? Are you trying to understand it? Because that ultimately is what determines, you know, your success in that area. Most likely is just going to be, do you want to learn about it and get better in that area? And that's something I'd also, if you're going into a field and you're not really curious and wanting to learn about it, you know, then I would ask, is that really the right field for you to go into?
Yeah.
Because that's honestly what's going to make you happy as well. If you feel some satisfaction of learning something new in an area that does involve a lot of innovation.
Okay, so one quality, lifelong learner. You're looking, so a student's walking in and you're looking for the next brilliant guy, right?
Yeah.
One quality, lifelong learner. Give me another.
I think there's just the commitment to doing the work, right? If you're curious about it, then are you willing to take that and go sit down and just focus your energy? You know, there is, I make it sound like just being curious and learning is all innovation, but you got to do the work. You've got to say, okay, I'm going to do the homework and I'm going to do this first assignment. I'm going to do this next assignment. And you've got to build that pattern of delivering on those you're looking at. And that is still an important quality.
Yeah, have to
And
balance.
deliver what you promise. That's another
Yeah.
thing, and deliver consistently. So I think that that's really important, especially, you know, finishing. We are trying to express for our students capacity to finish.
Right. And you know, the other one I'll say is just don't be a jerk. Thing of your, like you're working, you know, the small groups that you're working on, you know, the people who are paying to work with in there, like the people are going to move up and get opportunities, or ultimately those were just good people to work with.
Right.
And it's not a lot. Sometimes the smartest people, you know, who think they know everything are some of the hardest to work with. So we always made it a point. It's not always about just hiring like the 4.0, the smart student. It's looking for the person who can fit in, work with people, all that stuff they say about people skills and developing that. Like it's really true. Like that will probably determine your career success almost as much as anything.
I like
Yeah,
that. Don't be a
listen.
jerk. Another good quality.
Hey.
Tell me technically, where is this industry? So as you think about like Workiva and the work they do, tell me more about, so our students are trying to look at, what should I be innovating next? What is their casting the net? They're looking forward. What are they looking at? What's the horizon?
Well, you know, it depends on what field they're going into. I think there are several trends that are emerging, you know, where a lot of innovation is happening today. Certainly, you know, if you go into software, you know, there's cloud, there's whole new ways of building software there wasn't before. If you're going into, and there's whole new ways of generating energy that there wasn't before in terms of green technology, things that there's whole, you know, even new ways of working with people and looking at, you know, people's emotional IQ, how they work. Any field you're going into, there's going to be something that's out there on the boundary that one of the things I always would appreciate when someone would come in is they would point out to me something that I never even heard of or I hadn't even paid attention to, because spent some time like looking at this, being curious, thinking, you know, have you thought about this? And I had no clue what they were talking about. You know, that's one of the things that gets harder as you advance in your career. I started realizing like I'm out of touch with what's happening. And so it's people coming in offer me as much insight as anybody.
Hey, Dave, follow up and related, you've been involved with a lot of dynamic entrepreneurial enterprises, and now you're in a role where you're looking at potential investments. And when you hear a pitch, what resonates with you about the potential business opportunity?
Well, again, it's a lot of the kind of things I've been describing. One of the reasons I chose to make this my next step is because I found like I just love that environment. I love talking to people now and like hearing how they're thinking about something, hearing, okay, I found this problem and I think I have a solution to it. I think I can build a business around that.
Yeah.
That's what's really exciting to me. So again, I look for who are the people who can really describe that clearly? So this is, so I should have said another key thing, your ability to communicate clearly and concisely. Do not diss any of those English or speech classes you're taking right now. They will pay off tremendously, trust me. So can you communicate it clearly? Are you excited about it? Have you found something that you are just excited? You have a lot of energy. You're like, I want to go do this. Are they people who are looking not at just what's happening today, but they're looking at something in kind of a new, unique way?
Yeah.
And, you may have all those things, your business still fails because, starting a company, it's still like a 1 in 100 shot. It's going to be successful. But, those people who are just thinking about it in new and interesting ways, they're just great people to meet and to talk to.
No doubt.
So Dave, one of the things that you shared some really interesting stories when we spoke earlier about the process of innovating and how that works. Can you speak a little bit to the characteristics of innovation, that kind of rhythm, how that looked in a company? How does your company go through that process from ideation to deployment?
Yeah, that's a really good point because, you may listen to me and think innovation is some brilliant idea that comes to you in the middle of the night and you think about it and you go, and it works and everybody's happy. But it isn't really like that. It's messy and it's kind of a slog a lot of times. I think people need to understand that. Like, you're working on something, you may have a problem in front of you. The first 9 times you try to do it, it doesn't work. It's only that 10th time because you keep working on it and you keep trying and you keep making progress little by little. And honestly, a lot of innovation, like I said, it's not some huge idea. It's a whole bunch of small ideas that as you've worked through them, as you put them together, you sort of look back on it later and you think, hey, that was pretty cool. One example of this, when start web filings, we decided to build on the cloud, and this is when cloud was just kind of becoming a thing. Nobody trusted it. They didn't think it was secure enough. People thought we were stupid, building anything on the cloud for large financial institutions in particular. And we started working on it and we started building this product, and we started working with Google. We realized like they were missing a lot of things. Like there were a lot of gaps in terms of just how we even build and deploy our software there. So there were just all these little things that didn't work. And so we would take this little thing and this little thing. And so we built this whole system for building software and then pushing it, deploying it in the cloud. So pushing out a new version, of our site. And we thought it was kind of interesting. It was kind of cool. But then Google came and visited us because they were like, who is this little company in Iowa that keeps asking all these, that keeps telling us all these things that are wrong with our platform? Like, who are these people? And so we finally convinced them to fly to Iowa and to come sit down with them. And we walked them through what we were doing, what we were building. And they were like, crap, this is pretty cool. They're doing some neat stuff. And again, it wasn't like, it was just stuff that evolved. And that was the first time we sort of stopped and looked back and said, wow, like we did a lot of things. This wasn't even our product. It was just how we build our product.
Yeah.
And look back, they actually asked us if we would open source it for them at one point. We got this cool thing ever. Now we made a decision not to do that again because it would have been such a distraction from our main business. A lot of people wanted to do that, but that again, nothing really felt that innovative. We were doing it. It's only when we turned around and looked back later, we thought we kind of understood that.
And Dave, I'd like to segue into a question that piggybacks off of what you were just talking about. So this question is from Ahmed. Ahmed said, what does it take to get into the cloud computing industry? I'm graduating this December and want to go into cloud computing. Do you have any advice on what skills are needed to land a role and what I can do while in college to develop those skills?
Yeah, I think almost any, like if you're going into the software industry today, you're going to end up in cloud computing because that's where everything is going. So I would look for the type of companies that are interesting to you. What are they doing? What are they building? That looks interesting. It never hurts to just go be current. There's a lot of information from Amazon, Google, Microsoft, others about their platforms. Microservices, Kubernetes are terms you will hear about how people, that's kind of the current state of the art about how people are building cloud solutions today. So it's always good to look at those things and just be knowledgeable about them as you're walking into an interview. It never hurts to find out whoever you're talking to, if they're building on Amazon, go to Amazon's site, do a little bit of research, get a basic understanding, and ask them some good questions about what they're doing. That's always one of the things I appreciated about people I recognize had a lot of talent is they asked me as many questions as I asked them. And I think a lot of people when they're interviewing tend to want to give the best answers, not ask the best questions.
Great point.
So Dave, I'm looking at what are the ways in which you engage with young innovators? So how does that look for you? How does that look for your company? What's the process for these young innovators to really get in front of investors? What should they do? How should they prepare? What's the logistical process, as well as the mental and intellectual preparation?
So are you talking about people who are actually looking to start companies who are looking for funding, or?
Yeah, or even invention. They have invention and ideas. So I guess it's two different types of approaches.
Yeah, it's, I think, the first thing is having a good story about what you're doing, right? You may have a good invention or you built something, but you need to understand how people are going to use that. And when you talk about it, you need to talk about it from the point of view of, here's the problem that it's going to solve. It's going to make this person's life easier because it will do this. It's going to make things for this company much less expensive. It's going to make it, it's going to do something for somebody, not just it's going to do, I wrote this great software application that does, even like say you're just building a gaming application, like you've used the latest technology, you've built a really cool game. Well, the question is, does anybody use it? Does anybody like using it? And so again, it comes down to how clearly can you tell that story and how well do you understand the story? Then there are, if it's an invention, it's like what company would profit from using that invention? Who would use from that invention? Or maybe even a nonprofit. Maybe it solves a problem for a nonprofit organization that is out there. If you're looking to raise money, there are a number of programs at the state level that will help fund things. There are organizations like the Size Starters, the Startup Factory, things like that, where you can go test it out, in a safe environment, and then you can kind of graduate up the chain to venture funds. People are funding things like this. The good thing is there's a lot of resources out there, and that's where, people like Jim Oliver and all of you are in place to help people make some of those connections, right? So it's just a matter of leveraging the people around you, and don't be afraid to go meet people. Another thing that has probably benefited me more than anything in my career, and some people are more comfortable with it than others, is just the power of networking, the power of just going and talking to, say, Jim, and say, Jim, do you know somebody in this space? Could you introduce me to them? And that's not always the easiest thing to do, especially coming out of college when you don't have as much experience. The more time you spend just building your confidence in going up and meeting people, starting a simple conversation with them, that will pay off for you probably as much as anything else.
Yeah.
In your career.
Especially in computer science, when you are always on the computer doing coding, right?
But even there's like I don't know almost anybody working in software doesn't use Slack right now, and they've got some thread of instant messaging going back and forth with how many other people. It's so easy to branch out and meet people today.
Yeah.
It didn't always used to be the case.
I want to chime in with one additional question from Ahmed. He said, are there any certifications you'd recommend to get besides AWS or Azure? And I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. Also, what are the most important things to read about right now within cloud computing? So whether there's a blog or a social media site that you use to get your information from.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could specify like the ideal place to start, but they're all over. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, probably the leaders in the area of advancing that space right now. The real interesting cutting edge stuff is how do you apply AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning to those problems. Cloud computing is getting fairly mature now, but a lot of the cutting edge things are around, again, artificial intelligence. How do I make things smarter to work with? If you want to reach out to me, Ahmed, on the side, we could talk about that, and I could maybe talk you through some more specific places to start.
But on that note, and I know it's very specific for computer science, but in general, you said also that now you're on the other side, that sometimes you don't know things. Where do you go to discover things? Like reading blogs, reading books, paying attention to conversations outside your field. Where do you stand? And I know it's computer science, but
but I mean, it's almost with any topic. I mean, generally it starts with Google, right? And it starts, Google, Wikipedia, there, and as I've worked, I've tended to find a few sites just specific to me that I start looking at. Now the sites I tend to go to are more like venture capital sites, right? Because there's a lot I don't know there. So I'm just trying to find people who are influential there, but it's generally start with Google and.
So people you should have in your cabinet. Like you're thinking areas of, like if you were collecting types of people or people from certain areas, what areas would you look at collecting as you're going out into the world and you're connecting? what types of people, like if you think of really rounding out yourself as somebody who's interested in innovation and engaged in innovation, what would that look like for a young person?
So, so qualify that a little bit more in terms of the type of person to connect with, or the places you would find them, or
I'm thinking the types of people that will be most helpful for students to have connection with and relationship with as they begin their professional journey, breaking into a field. You know, as a young person, it's really hard to be in a position in a company or in anywhere where you are allowed to
Right.
engage.
Well, interestingly enough, it's like Iowa State, like there's a lot of value in simply like the alumni network, because most alumni, like, they love making connections with students, with people like you in this class, because they appreciate the fact that people are reaching out to them. And I'm not sure if students really recognize like the value simply of your alumni network. And then as you get into more specific fields, generally like the people who present at conferences, you can find a lot of online virtual conferences now. If you find that the speaker's really interesting to you, I would challenge you to send them a LinkedIn invite. And in that block, just say, hey, I saw your presentation on this. Would you be willing to talk to me a little bit about that? Like sometimes you're going to get really famous people who will be hard to get to connect with, but a lot of times they'll say, yeah, I'll talk to you for a little bit.
That's okay. So now several opportunities here. You brought up confidence. And I think what you're saying, maybe, and you can talk about this, is the permission. Students have to assume they're invited. They have to, right? They have to assume they're invited. They have to have the confidence that they have permission to walk into these spaces, right?
Yeah, I think that's really a good point. It kind of comes back to the point I was making at the beginning about being okay, being not afraid to fail. You don't have, I still have, there's some people I reach out to, I think, like, I probably shouldn't be contacting this person. They don't have any reason to talk to me. But I've just gotten used to enough saying some people respond, some don't. But it's simply giving it a shot. And if it doesn't work, if they tell you to buzz off, or if they just don't respond, then just move on. And that's easy for me to say because I've been through a lot of times, but I understand, like, when you're coming into it, if you have this feeling like, okay, I really need to be invited or have permission, it can be a tough thing to get over. I don't want to minimize how hard that is, because it's easy for me to say that, but I understand on the other side, it can be a real barrier.
Dave, proudest moment, when you think about your best and biggest innovation, when you think about whether it's a process, a system, an experience, a team, and you think about, I am so glad and I will never forget having this legacy, this moment as part of my innovation pathway. What is that? Can you tell a story about that a little bit?
If there's a single proudest moment, there have been a lot, like when we talked about that first filing we executed. We talk about, our teams, like we talked, when we had Google come out here and they were telling us how cool what we did, like that was really a great moment. I think when I look back right now, when I started at what was web filings, when I was with Jim, we're at Engineering Animation. They were eventually acquired a couple of times. I ended up being part of Siemens. I was kind of moving up. I had a team of about 30 people or something, and I was on a pretty good career path. And I heard about this thing, web filings, that was starting, and so I went over and talked to him. And Marty was talking to me about what, are you interested in coming over here? And so we're just talking about it. And I was telling him about, this team, that I was working with and building and what I was doing. And he said, yeah, that's interesting. What if you came here though, and you had the opportunity to build the engineering organization that you've always wanted to work for? And that's what really stuck with me, because I thought, man, I don't even know if I can do that. Like, am I capable of building building an organization? And like, I still think when I decided to step down, the toughest thing for me was the people I was going to walk away from.
Mm.
But the greatest sense of pride I have is like knowing, like, we built a team that's recognized as one of the best in the industry
Yeah, you did.
now. And I take a huge amount of pride in it. As hard as it was, I take a lot of pride in that now. And I point back to it as that will probably be the key accomplishment of my career, I think, was just being part of that. And I certainly didn't do it all. There were a lot of people involved in that, but I got to have a pretty good role in it.
Dave, could you talk a little bit more about your thought process in making that decision? Because you talked about how hard it was to walk away, but I assume that there was something else that was enticing you on the other side. So could you talk a bit about the questions that you asked yourself to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, it was, and it was tough too, because I had a lot of loyalty to that organization, to Marty, Jeff Traum, the CTO. I felt like we weren't quite done yet, but I felt like I'm kind of doing a lot of the things. I'm not learning as much anymore. Like, I just had this feeling like I don't know as I'm really. It's pretty easy. I don't know as I'm really pushing any limits. I start to get a little bit bored. I've been doing it for almost 12 years. And the interesting thing is, like, I didn't even recognize this myself. Like, I think Marty was sort of key in just sort of just asking me questions like, are you really doing stuff that excites you anymore? And he said, is this really what you want to be doing? And he was so graceful in the way he handled it. He just kind of helped me come to that realization. And I realized, like, I would go to like either ag startup engine or sci starters things or startup fact, and I would start seeing things are going on, and that's what I would just get kind of excited about. And so it's this process of coming to the realization, like, this is really what I enjoy doing. And so I stepped down and started just doing a little bit of consulting for people like that. And I met the guys like Kyle McMahon, who's doing Tractor Zoom now, and I thought that was interesting. And there's some companies in Des Moines, and it all kind of a period of about 9 months there felt like, yeah, I think this is really what I want to do. And so, and it just, it came together.
I like what you're saying. I spoke with someone who was going to retire, and then my mistake, because the person said, I'm not retiring. I'm not done yet. I'm quitting this because I'm not done. And I have, so the innovator path of not, I know that we spoke for the hour of finishing things and the importance of delivery, but I have this feeling in talking with this person that it's the constant spark of not finishing, or when it's about to be finished, you go on to the next one and to the next one. Karen will know, and Jim and Nakaya, that I'm talking about the mushroom culture. Another idea comes in while you are still implementation of the previous one. Do you recognize this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that is, it's like you get, and I felt that way when I stepped away too. It's like, it's kind of almost done. It's almost there, but no, man, this really over here looks really exciting. And that's what was holding me back though, because I was thinking I have to finish everything here. And even though it was never going to be done, it's just recognizing that, I'm not sure how much I'm really learning anymore. I don't know that I ever necessarily will retire. Up from this, I'll just probably move on to doing something else that's interesting. And I have no idea what that is at this point.
Yeah, I like that a lot. The other lesson that I learned with this person who's not retiring is that there's other people who will continue, or it's like innovation is infectious or contagious. And so it's okay for you to have a spark because someone else will pick up on the work and continue it forward. I wanted to talk to that about with our students as well. How is teamwork and the relations that you have with other collaborators in the world of innovation? Because it's a very competitive world, especially in computer science. So how do you find bridges of collaboration?
You know, I guess I don't necessarily think of it as a competitive world because most of the people I've met out there are similar to me. It's just kind of the position I'm in. Maybe it's the groups that I tend to go in. People tend to be pretty open, pretty collaborative, generally have a lot of the same goals. Now, you know, occasionally you do meet people who are, you know, who are just jerks or who are trying to get ahead at your expense. I mean, that's just part of the world. And I think you recognize it for what it is, but it maybe there's a lot out there. I just know that I tend to gravitate toward people who have a similar mindset, which isn't, you know, and you got to be a little bit careful there because you don't want to find people who are just like you as well. You know, we kind of came to this realization that having a bunch of white guys who are thinking about the problem the same way is not necessarily a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
And this is where like the concept of diversity is, this is what we would just get slapped in the face with at time because we would have in mind a way that we were going to do something. And then we go talk to somebody on the other side and they're like, what are you thinking? It was somebody, and this is where people of different cultures, nationalities, I am more confident than ever that as we build teams, they need to be balanced, male, female, race, because that is really how you start to really appreciate how people think about what's really good for them. And it's not just you know, because diversity and inclusion is an important topic right now. Like it makes sense for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's so critical in doing things that really make a difference if it's really useful for a range of people.
Yeah, Dave, related to team building, and we talked about earlier about you know, especially in your small organization, and you get somebody that's just not. So you're in a meeting and you get the naysayer, the knee-jerk, that'll never work kind of person. How do you gracefully train them or put them on a side path, or what? I'm sure you've had challenging teammates in the years. What's your strategy for getting the most out of them or getting them out of the way in a graceful way?
Yeah, that's probably one of the toughest things to learn as a manager. One of the hardest things, one of the things we'll tend to avoid as much as just having those hard conversations. The thing that I found helped me in that regard, and now I see why this made sense, is we went back to really defining what are our values, like what are the things that are important to us as an organization. And once we did that, we sat down and said, you know, humility is an important value for us. The ability to have an open debate and you know, not be a jerk to people, the ability to try new things, those, so that's a set of values that we hold. So then once you've kind of got that sphere, that kind of understanding, then like what you do is you fire people, let them go based on they just don't hold the same set of values.
Yeah.
Not that they can't deliver. Some people were brilliant at delivering code, but they were hard to work. They just created a lot of friction in the organization. I'm sorry, but this is not a good place for you to work. Some people are just, in over their head, they're not going to be able to work, to function in an organization at the level we need to.
Mhm.
And again, this is about like, we need people who can deliver, but you've got to just help them understand, like, there are other places they're probably a better fit for you.
Yeah.
And those are the hardest conversations you'll ever have, but they're also some of the most valuable, because you've got to be willing to make those calls at times.
Yeah.
Dave, I think it's so interesting that, we keep coming back to this theme of the key and critical component of an innovator is to have a capacity to tolerate and successfully kind of navigate discomfort.
Mhm.
And in the discomfort, to do the thing that seems completely impossible to do, have confidence,
Mhm.
right? So as you think about that, and I want to look as we're kind of moving into this will probably be one of our last questions. But as you think about that tension, where do you find the confidence in the discomfort? What prepared you and what sustained you? What thoughts, beliefs, values create that confidence that allows you to address and embrace the discomfort?
Well, again, I want to be careful as I start out saying, you don't have confidence when you do those things the first time. Like, the way you develop confidence is by doing those things and then understanding what worked and what didn't. And then the next time you do it, you at least know one thing not to do. And then the next time you do it, you maybe know another thing. So I think I still don't have confidence if I'm going to need to let somebody. I never have had confidence going into that conversation. I knew I had to do it. I knew that, but I didn't have confidence about it. Doing it enough times, now I kind of know what to do. And so that's, again, where I just want to emphasize everybody out there, you're not going to have that confidence when you first do it. The key is you're willing to do it, and you're willing to be wrong, and you're willing to screw up going into it.
So I want to reflect grace, humility, curiosity, that it seems to me as you reflect on those things that help you through those, even when you speak to Marty, grace, humility, curiosity, being able to be present in those moments, those are all things that help build that confidence and build a culture where those just uncomfortable things can happen.
Right. And that's the way I look at it. But you also have to take, and especially for students out there, not every innovative organization is going to be like that. I don't know if Tesla is like that. I'm guessing Elon Musk has a different approach to things than I would probably have. I'm guessing he's probably not somebody I would ever work for, but that doesn't mean he's not an outstanding innovator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is kind of my approach, is what's worked. I'm not saying there's not other approaches out there that other people might find a better fit.
No. So
I know that we haven't used that word, but in everything that you are saying, and I was reading my notes when we had a talk before, there's a little bit of risk tolerance as well. Is it like a conscious thing, or at the beginning, is it fair to say to students that it's, you just go because you do it and you try, and now that you are at the end of the spectrum, well, I think that you are starting again, aren't you, doing it in the beginning?
Yeah, but I think the good things a lot of students have is they don't even understand there's risk there, right? They just go do it and they try it, and they don't even know whether it's risky or not. That's one of the great things I love about students coming out of college, is when they just go do something because it looks interesting, and they didn't realize that there was risk. It's only after you get beat up a few times maybe you understand the risk that's there. So,
but isn't that brilliant? I like that part. I see it now in my kids. They don't measure it. There's no,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right? Yeah, it's brilliant.
So, Dave, I want to thank you really for your story and your time. It was characterized by grace and humility, and
Yeah, I agree.
and also that willingness to be vulnerable, even with us about the journey. You've done just a fabulous job, and there's so many wonderful lessons I think that we've learned today. And as what I'm going to come back to too is, the idea of outcome versus output. I mean, that is like one of the gems I think we need to put in our innovation crown too for our students. That is helpful. And also the significance of Iowa State in terms of really imploding your resources here. And I think I can't emphasize enough, and I appreciate you bringing up that point. We have fabulous, world-renowned, prize-winning alumni here and expertise available to us, and really a critical effort that we're really going to focus on in these coming years as we look at innovation programming is more specifically integrating that expertise of our alums. And you're one of those people. Thank you for joining us as part of our Innovation Fellows Corps.
I think, well, you deserve a lot of credit too. There was no Student Innovation Center when I was Iowa State. It wasn't a conversation that we're having. It's an incredible resource, what you've got there. So take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I want to thank too, especially Nakaya, Jim Oliver, and Abram Anders, who's usually with us. And oh my gosh, untold numbers of faculty, our deans, our president engaged, really volunteering and donating their time in an effort that previously wasn't part of their emphasis. They've thrown themselves in. And the other one I want to thank and acknowledge, Spencer Braley won an award for his efforts at making all these things happen, because really his work here has opened up a portal for us and a presence that was never before part of our even our mindset, that has turned out to be a phenomenal opportunity to bring in people like you. So Spencer, congratulations on your excellence award for creating things like this. You got to come on screen, Spencer, at least show your face. So
With the lights, with the Christmas lights.
yeah, and I just want to make sure too that you're aware, next week for our flagship innovator, we have Leila Arjaralu. That's the correct pronunciation of her name.
Yes.
She's the founder of Disrupt Design, the Unschool and Co project farm in Portugal. She deals a lot with sustainability and addresses innovation as disruption. She's been featured in the New York Times. She's the founder of 2 design agencies, Disrupt Design and Eco Innovators, as well as the Unschool. And she calls herself uniquely rebellious, experimental. She does a knowledge lab, and she is going to be doing a 6-week design circuit here, Disrupt Design Circuit here, that will start sometime in February 4th, I believe. And so just please don't miss that next week. She's from the UK. She's an invaluable resource, world renowned. And then the other one I want to bring your attention to, on February 4th, we have Make Me a Millionaire by 40, but it still won't be enough. Right? And but no, we have the unique opportunity of dealing with a young innovator and entrepreneur, Jonathan J. Pearson and Jonathan Fox. We're calling them J Squared. They're going to be talking about how to address issues of money, what you need to look like as an innovator. What does your financial stewardship look like, and portfolio and presence look like? How do you handle your student debt? What does that look like if you're going to engage on this path? So that will be happening on the 4th, and don't forget our flagship next week. So thank you, everyone. And remember, you can, at Iowa State, we're innovating everywhere, and we're inviting anyone.
Yeah.
So have
Thanks
a good
again,
day.
Dave.
Yep. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Bye.